And I'm Matt Hanna.
And this is Horror Hour with the Hannas,
where we talk about all your favorite scary movies.
And this week we are talking about Sinister. I didn't think it was that scary when I saw it the first time in college. And then on every, scariest movie list, Sinister's up there.
For, the scientific heartbeat one?
Every heartbeat study has it as number one. And, yeah, I don't understand that. I don't remember it being that scary. And I watched it for the first time in my non-horror era. So, those words come out correctly. In my non-horror era. This is the third month in a row that I've had a cold while we've been recording an episode, so I feel like I just don't know how to talk anymore, but...
Stop being sick, nerd.
Yeah, my bad.
I do not remember the first time I watched this at all.
No.
I have no idea. I don't know if I watched it the whole way through until you and I watched it in school at one point. Honestly, I have no idea. I remember it being fine. I remember thinking it was fine, nothing too crazy. I did think it had one of the better jump scares I had seen in movies, so I understand that. But I will say, upon this watching, I liked it a lot more than all other previous viewings.
Interesting.
Yeah, I had fun with it.
Well, Sinister is a 2012 film directed by Scott Derrickson, and it was written by Scott Derrickson along with C. Robert Cargill. And starring Ethan Hawke. Yeah,
and he's very, very good in this, as he is in everything.
Yeah, I was going to say, Ethan Hawke just, puts on a good performance. Unfortunately,
I don't think he has a great track record of picking good
I don't
movies.
think he's a very good picker, no.
He has one really good one, that Paul Schrader movie. Oh, The Black Phone. No, I was going to say First Reformed. First Reformed is maybe his best movie.
I feel like now I'm blanking on his whole filmography. I don't know.
It's because it's not great, but he's good in everything.
Some good older stuff, but his horror resume isn't
in The Purge.
Great. Because he's in The Purge, he has Daybreakers. Boyhood was an Oscar-nominated film, though, so if you're gonna go outside of horror, that's probably his big film.
No, so I stand by the fact, looking at all these that you have up right now, that First Reformed is by far his best movie and best performance.
Yeah, I feel like for good actor, he is just the worst picker.
It's very funny.
Not the worst, but he's up there in top 10 worst pickers.
Get him in more. He's really talented, so.
And he's handsome.
The Black Phone was good, too.
Him and his little, sweater with the elbow pads. I was oh my god. And, you know what's funny? I was reading fun facts about this. He also loved that sweater. He was supposed to, cut his arm and cut that sweater. And he refused. He was I did not want to cut the sweater. I want to wear it later in the movie. So he ends up with a cut on his leg instead to avoid harming the precious sweater.
Makes sense.
And I loved that for him. And for me, because I got to see him in the sweater. It was great. It was a win-win. Some other fun behind the scenes is that Sinister was actually inspired by a nightmare that C. Robert Cargill, one of the writers, had after watching The Ring.
That makes sense. This actually does kind of have some J-horror feels to it.
Yeah, and I think his brain was in very scary mode. So he said his dream was, I was climbing into my attic when I saw a box of Super 8 films and a projector in it. I spooled up the first film and it was the opening image of Sinister. That nightmare stuck with me for a while and I realized it might make for a pretty good movie.
The family hanging was
that was his nightmare.
Dream? That's scary.
That's not
a spoiler. That's the opening of the movie.
Horrifying.
Yeah, that imagery is really good. I remember being in the trailers and being very scary. So great idea.
Part of me, doesn't love that that's the starting one, because it's not, clear that it's a murder, and
it's not clear that it's a murder?
Seeing it on your screen, the first image, no, it's just 4 people hanging and then a tree branch. I don't know.
Alright, I think that's a you issue.
It's so close to an actual
way that people... You
don't
see the tree being sawed by an unseen figure?
I guess it's just so close to a way that people actually die by suicide that it made me feel uncomfy.
Yeah, I mean,
but also it's just supposed to make you feel uncomfy. I just feel like I had an extra layer of uncomfy because I was like, is this okay?
I don't want to be morbid, but I don't see it as a common way of died by suicide. I see it as a common way of execution. So maybe that's where my head's at with it.
Oh, yeah, I guess your brain and my brain just went in different directions with that. So
I guess it's not common anymore. I'm sure some states
so I could see, why you would be like, no, that's just how like people
Which makes
die.
me even more scared. Like the opening of Pirates of the Caribbean 3 really scares me. And still scares me.
That's so funny because I'm like unfazed by
really
that scene.
It really upsets me. It like really upsets me with the little kid.
Okay, the little kid is fucked up, but
not all the other people getting mass executed.
No, it's fucked up, but it's like even more fucked up that it's like a fucking child singing pirate shanties.
Yeah,
just
before dying. Yeah, it's fucked up.
It's a really well done scene, honestly. Pirates of the Caribbean. Great
yeah, those first 3 movies are great.
Trilogy. There are no more films after the first 3. Anyway, Sinister. Another fun fact just about how they filmed. They wanted the Super 8s to seem really authentic. So they were shot on actual Super 8 cameras and film stock.
Hell yeah.
And I think that very much pays off. I think they look really good.
Yeah, I didn't realize. I was like, oh, I'm sure that they're doing some After Effects things to make it look like that. But no, that's pretty impressive.
They also didn't show Ethan Hawke, like, the Super 8s. So when he's doing his scenes, like, that was the first time
they were very
saw
disturbing
them.
looking, so...
So some of what's on screen is, like, his reaction to them. Which is fucked.
It was very cool.
Another fun behind-the-scenes thing is that the young actors playing the ghost kids, when they first met on set, I guess they talked about how they could overhear the kids saying, like, hey, how did you kill your parents? And just, like, comparing notes on their murders. Which I thought was, like, honestly so cute. And lastly, as we said in our little intro for this, is that it's consistently ranked number 1 or, like, in the top 2 or 3 for scariest films. So in a study conducted by Broadband Choices, tracking heart rates of 50 people who watched over 100 hours of scary movies, it ranked number 1. And the Science of the Scare Project did heart rate monitors to 250 test subjects. And they've done it over the span of 4 years, and it's been number 1 at least twice.
Listen, this movie has some scary moments, but I have seen many more scary movies.
It's not the film that spiked people's heart rates the most in one single scare.
Skinamarink kept me elevated from minute 20 to end.
Skinamarink is in the top 5.
It should be. Skinamarink should be number 1.
Well, it's not. Sorry,
The Babadook also gave me a lot of anxiety and a lot of scares the first time.
That's not in the top 10 from the last year.
Yeah, a lot of people don't like that movie, but the first time I watched it really scared
20.
me. Makes sense.
It's up there for me.
Yeah.
So speaking of that, before we get into our 15-second summaries, I'm just going to say, since we're talking about scary, I hid 3 to 4 times, and I screamed 3 times, like, pretty bad.
You just said it wasn't that scary. You kept going, the whole movie.
I do that with, like, most movies
and you refused to look, and I was like, it's weird, because I don't remember the movie. I don't remember watching it the first time, but I know everything that happens. Like, I remember every scare. I could see every scare coming. Mm-hmm. Maybe they're just telegraphed, I don't know.
Well, I still don't think
or they were in the trailers.
Scary,
some of the good scares were in the trailers.
I still don't think it's as scary as other movies in the top 10 or top 20, but the 3 that made me scream were pretty loud screams. I scrumped pretty loud. The scream I scrumped. Well, let's do our 15-second summary.
Sure, you're first. Gotcha.
Okay.
Are you ready? Go.
Asshole dad makes family move into house where crime was committed and then bad things happen.
You got it. There you go.
All right, ready? 3, 2, 1, go.
This is why we need to outlaw true crime. That's all I'm saying.
Sure, yeah.
I'm a true crime hater.
Yeah, Matt.
Get rid of it. No more need for true crime.
Matt does not like that I listen to a true crime podcast to go to bed.
And it's fine. I think it's overdone and can get kind of gross, which this movie definitely addresses.
I 100% agree.
And I think there are a lot of people that have allowed it to shape their worldview and are scared to go outside because of it.
Any of the people that I know that listen to true crime podcasts have no problem, but I understand that
there are people that do.
Yeah.
And maybe it's just TikTok that I've seen of these women like locking themselves up in their house when their husband leaves because of true crime. And I'm like,
well, it also...
Well, I don't think it's because of true crime, but I assume it's true crime brain.
Just people memeing on TikTok.
It could be.
But I
can't imagine it's good for us.
There's like a lot of issues with the ethics of true crime and like consuming that, especially if it's not in support of the victims or financially benefiting the victims. And it's made me really consider like which true crime podcasts I'm listening to, because I think some of the ones that I've listened to when they started, they were very heavily focused on the victim. And I still think that they are, but I think they don't do as much as they should or could because they're more self-serving now. And so I'm just not going to like name names, but I do think that's a problem kind of across the board. And I think there's a lot we can say about the ethics of true crime.
There's also just too much of it. There's great stories. I love it. You know, it's fun. I think their stories are fun, but then some of these just like...
You're like, murder is fun.
Yeah, I mean, the mystery ones, like unsolved stuff. Unsolved stuff, very fun.
Priceless Pizza.
Yes,
think
yeah,
about
that one's awesome.
Forever.
That one's a really good one.
It's a really interesting case. But I think we like that because we're like, no, I definitely think he's still alive and fine. So that's why we're so interested in
He's out there having a good time, I hope.
I hope. But, yeah, so I think this newsflash, that's like the biggest theme and takeaway that I have of this film.
Or the lamb. What's her name? Lamb?
Ada.
That's her name? Ada Lamb?
Wait, I'm thinking of the movie Lamb. I'm like,
the Cecil Hotel.
Elisa Lamb.
Elisa Lamb, that one's really cool. Well, not that she died, but that one's really scary.
Interesting.
Because it's a mystery, yeah.
Well...
Listen, I get it. I get why people like it. We need less of it.
Yeah.
I need everyone to like it a little less.
Well, if we switched into the true crime route, we'd get way more listens. So.
No, maybe we should. Never mind. I'll do it. I'll self-serve. Okay. Sinister was based on a true story. I don't know if you guys know. So, no, I'm making that up. That's the true crime. Yeah. Get it? You're supposed to go with me there.
Yeah, I was like, wait, what?
All right, let me do the real... Yeah, this is all based on a true story, and here is the real plot description. Sure. No, the case description, I should say.
Matt, shut the fuck up.
Okay. So, true crime writer Ellison moves into a home in the fictional town of Chatford, Pennsylvania with his wife Tracy, their 12-year-old son Trevor, and their 7-year-old daughter Ashley. Unbeknownst to his wife and children, Ellison has moved them into the home where the Stevenson family were killed by hanging in the backyard. He intends to write a book about the case to regain the fame he lost after his best-selling book was followed by 2 less successful works. He hopes to learn the fate of the 10-year-old Stephanie Stevenson who disappeared following the murders. Ellison finds a box in the attic that contains a projector and reels of Super 8 films, each labeled as home movies. The films are footage of different families being murdered in various ways. Each killing is performed by an unseen camera operator. Ellison notes the appearance of the mysterious cult symbol and a strange, eerie man in the films. Ellison matches footage of a throat-slitting murder to the news reports from St. Louis, Missouri in 1998. 3 members of the Miller family were killed, while 13-year-old Christopher vanished. One night, Ellison investigates noises in the attic. Inside the film reel's canister lid, he finds childlike drawings depicting the killings, with an eerie figure called Mr. Boogie also present. Ellison consults a local deputy and discovers that the film murders took place at different times at different cities around the country dating back to 1966. A child from each family disappeared following every murder, and before the Stevensons moved to Chatford, they lived in the Millers' former house. The deputy refers Ellison to a cult specialist, Professor Jonas, to decipher the symbol in the films. Jonas relates the symbol to an ancient and obscure pagan Babylonian god, Bagul, who would kill entire families and take one of their children to consume their soul slowly. Jonas suspects the murders are part of a cult initiation rite, rather than the work of a single murderer. As Ellison investigates footsteps and noises throughout the home one night, it is revealed that ghost-like children, invisible to Ellison, are the cause, with one of them appearing in Ashley's bedroom. Ashley later paints this girl, whom she identifies as Stephanie Stevenson. Another night, Ellison hears the film projector running and finds the missing children seated in the attic watching one of the films. Bagul appears on camera before physically appearing before Ellison. Ellison takes the camera projector and snuff films outside and destroys them. He tells Tracy that they are moving back to their old home. Jonas sends Ellison, now back at his old house, historical images associated with Bagul. Early Christians believed that the images of Bagul served as a gateway for the monster to come from the spiritual realm to the mortal world, and Bagul can possess children who come into contact with these images. Ellison discovers the unharmed projector and films in his new attic, along with a new film labeled Extended Cut Endings. The new footage depicts the missing children coming on screen following each murder, revealing themselves to be the murderers under Bagul's influence. The deputy calls Ellison and informs him that every deceased family had once lived in the house where the previous murder murders took place. Each new murder occurred shortly after the family moved from the crime scene into a new home. By moving away from the Stevenson house, Ellison has marked himself and his family as the next victims. Ellison becomes lightheaded and notices a green liquid at the bottom of his coffee mug, along with a note from Ashley that says, "Good night, Daddy," before losing consciousness. He awakes to find himself, Tracy, and Trevor bound and gagged on the floor. Ashley approaches them while filming with an 8mm camera. She tells her father that she will make him famous again and proceeds to slaughter her family with an axe. She then uses their blood to paint childish pictures on the walls of the hallway. Ashley views the film of her murders while drawing the killing in the lid of the home movie's box. The missing children stare at her through the movie, but flee when Bagul appears. He lifts Ashley into his arms and teleports into the movie. The box of film sits on the Oswalt family's attic, now accompanied by Ashley's reel titled House Painting 2012. That's it.
That was too much.
And then Bagul jumps in front of the camera at the very end to scare us.
Yeah.
Why was that too much?
It was just so long.
That's everything that happens. What could I cut? Nothing.
I don't know.
I did my best. Okay. All right. What do you have to say about this movie? Did you like it?
It was fine. Middle of the road for me, honestly. There are things about it that I guess I just didn't ever feel like fully invested, if I'm gonna be honest. Like, I think also I was waiting to be like really fucking petrified, and that just like never happened, so I was kind of bummed out. And I think that the highlight of the film is that the Super 8s look so good. And I'm gonna give props where props are due. Like, they looked great. It was really smart how they filmed them, how they actually filmed them on Super 8s. I just feel like overall, they didn't scare me that... They made me uncomfortable, but they didn't scare me that much. And then outside of that, I didn't find the film, like, overly compelling either.
I agree with you that the Super 8s are the best part. I almost feel like a movie just of, like...
Those.
Of, like, 6 to 12 Super 8s of just short horror like that would work really well. So keep that idea in mind. All right. I enjoyed... I do think it's middle of the road. That's fine. I will also say I think it's funny how you were disappointed to not be scared. I feel like you've grown up so much. Who knew? You like to be scared now?
I don't. But, like, I guess when you're... It's funny. Like, obviously I have a horror podcast. And I'm like, I don't want to be scared. I guess because this is supposedly, according to people's heart rates, so scary, I was like, okay, we're doing it. I'm ready. I'm sitting down. I'm doing it. Like, I have to be in the mood to be scared. And I just was like,
Yeah, I guess I knew it was fine. I knew there were some very scary moments, and those ones lived up. Specifically, the lawnmower scene
I did
is, I think, one of the best
bad.
jump scares I've ever seen. For those listening, it's the scene where it's an 8mm reel again, and the kid is moving his lawnmower in the rain, and you're like, what's going on? And it's really dark, and then all of a sudden he just runs over a family member's face with the lawnmower, and then it basically cuts after that.
I'm surprised you think that's like one of the best jump scares you've seen.
That's like not a debated thing. A lot of people have said that that's like one of the best, like, scariest jump scares. Because, like, you just know something's coming, but it's still just somehow worse than what you expect. And I think, like, everyone's had maybe a little bit of a lawnmower fear at some point. Like, those blades are scary. They move very fast. They're heavy. Like, I put my hand up in there. It scares me.
Maybe I'm just a bitch, but, like, that wasn't even the scariest jump scare in the movie for me.
Was it Bagul jumping in front of the camera? Because I think those ones are scary, but they're not very entertaining, where this one is much more entertaining, and I think a more earned scare.
That's fair. Yeah, there is the build-up to it.
Yeah, it's very earned, and, like, it really, I think it pulls you out of your seat. Mm-hmm. But overall, I would say I find this movie decently compelling. Like, I was definitely invested. I was having fun watching it. The performances are good. I enjoy the editing style. I think it's pretty... I want to say it's unique, because it was definitely... inspired by the Saw movies with some of its, like, fast cuts and, like, removing frames. I could definitely see some of that, like, funky editing, but it, like, at least was interesting and, like, different, at least from what I'm seeing a lot of right now. I enjoyed that a lot. I think you said the 8mm parts are awesome, and they really are. They're cut together so well. And I actually do think Ethan Hawke's reactions to them also make them a fun watch.
Yeah.
The story's fine. It's a possession story. There's nowhere to really go. Once you reveal like what the deal of the monster is, it kind of like loses steam, right? That's like a thing you see in possession a lot. Same thing happened with Insidious. We talked about that. However, the design of Bagul, Mr. Boogie, is really good and very scary, and I think remains scary even when you see him. Like, he's hard to look at. And I think it's because they do a really good job of blending him into the photos, where it's like that when you see faces in photos that you don't expect to be there and they scare the shit out of you, this is like the perfect face for that. So
yeah, apparently they were originally going to make him look kind of similar to Johnny Depp in the Willy Wonka movie, or Charlie and the Chocolate Factory movie, and they were like, we have to spin this a little bit, but I do think he looks a lot like that, and it's so funny. It
is funny. I would say he's just distorted enough, though, that it's like, you could look at it and be like, is that a face in the picture, or isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think like staring at that really like unsettles me, and I think it's a good design, and that remains scary. I don't know, I never saw the sequel, so I don't know if it's scary there, but kind of cool character. I like that he doesn't talk at all. He'd just be lurking.
Just be lurking.
Yep. But overall, yeah, I had a good time. Like I said, it's not anything groundbreaking, but I think it's not bland. I think it is entertaining enough. So, and has some decent scares.
I think I struggled with some of my suspension of disbelief in this one, which I don't feel like I struggle with that often in the movies we watch. I think I'm just like, okay, this is the world of the movie. I'm cool with that. But in this one, I think it's really hard for me to, like, believe and relate to the mom and, like, care about the family, honestly, because mom's a fucking dumb shit. Like, I don't understand how you buy a house and you don't research the house or the neighborhood or the area. Like, I simply don't understand how she could make this move and not know that the house she's moving into.
I think she thought her husband wasn't that crazy.
But I think he's kind of proved it before he is. Like, she knows that he is. So then moving in, she's like, oh, you promise it's not a couple doors down? Like, if...
Well, she said she didn't want to know if it was. So he said, no, it's not. Even though it was the same house.
I would have been looking that shit up so fast. I would be like, no, absolutely not. So, I don't know. I just didn't, like, believe her. And so then it's, like, hard to give a shit about the kids and the family, like, dying. And, like, I don't care about their safety because I just felt like they were dumb.
See, as someone who doesn't really believe in any of this stuff, I just, like, don't have that much of a fear of moving into a home where people were murdered. People were murdered all over this land. What's the difference between a home?
I do not want to move into a house where people are murdered.
You live in Philadelphia. Like, I'm sure over the past 200 years there's been plenty of murders, right? Like, wars were fought here. Yeah. On this soil.
That doesn't, like, bother me. It's more like I would not be comfortable moving into a house or buying a house where I knew that recently someone was murdered. Oh. And they do in a lot of states, if not all, I don't really know, have to disclose that. And I feel like that would actually make me not buy a house.
No, you live currently in an apartment.
I'm sure people in this building have died.
Yeah, I was about to say.
I'm well aware. Like, you live in an apartment building. It used to be a
factory, and then it's one of those cool, those yuppie gentrified places where they bought a factory for no money and turned it into apartments. And we love it. Somebody definitely died here.
I'm well aware of that, but I haven't been told this for certain. I don't know that person's name.
Sure.
And I haven't seen the footage of them hanging in my apartment.
Good point. Well, yeah, that footage, nobody knew that footage existed, though, until he found it.
Yeah, but, like, the people in the town know that that's what happened.
Oh, yeah, no, like, that one's pretty horrific. The tree would be coming down if I bought that house, but you get it for a steal. If you want to own a home, that's probably what we got to look for.
We're not buying that house. We are not buying...
Guess we can't afford a house, then.
We can. So, I don't know.
If somebody got murdered there, that's the point I'm trying to make.
No. I can't do that.
All right.
So, I don't know. I just, like, didn't buy into that. And I think they do make it clear, like, the kids are struggling in some capacity, but I don't think, like, we see the world so much through Ethan Hawke's character's eyes, and he doesn't give a fuck what's going on with the kids.
But he's definitely like that. He's like, he's very much focused on fame.
I know, so it's, like, hard to give a shit about his family, so then it's hard to be scared for all of them.
Interesting.
And I'm partly scared for Ethan Hawke, I think, because he's put himself in this situation, and he don't care. That's
interesting. I feel like that's just a you thing, because like I don't think I feel that way. I'm curious if other people felt that way.
Yeah, I was invested still.
I understand. Like, he is obsessed with the fame, and he's like definitely neglecting his family because of it, because he's trying to get back to where he was, and his family's kind of just along for the ride, hoping that they can be successful, and like hoping that he'll come to and not be a freak about this stuff, right? So they're just like living their life as they can. I mean, he's definitely like bringing in money. Or was.
Yeah, like, that's the thing I think
they were getting closer to broke.
Is that he is a breadwinner for the family. Like, they moved from a very large house that they probably are having trouble affording because he needs a good selling book.
But he also refuses to do other ways of making money.
I know, and I think that also
just plays into the themes.
That reminds me so much of like a personal issue that I have with a certain one of my parents, that like really contributed to us being financially stable for up until like now. Like, it put me into adulthood very financially stable because my dad, unstable.
You keep saying stable, okay, yeah.
Sorry,
unstable.
Yeah, it really fucked up my financial stability because my dad, like, at one point got laid off from a job where he was very, very high up, and then he was kind of like wouldn't take anything less than that, but then that meant he didn't get a job. So then, like, that led to a lot of financial crisis that has followed me into adulthood, because how can it not? So
all right.
I think I had a vendetta against Ethan Hawke in like every way in this film. So I'm like, fuck you. Good night, Daddy.
We can move on from real life horror back into fictional horror. Or the true crime horror. But so that's how I feel about it. I guess I understand why you wouldn't like feel for them, but I don't know. I still cared about the characters. Kids didn't do anything wrong. And Ethan Hawke, I get it. He wants to solve the mystery. But then it just like gets crazier and crazier, and he refuses to do anything about it. I
understand like wanting to solve.
Well, he wants to solve it and make money,
but not for like the motivation he has. Like, obviously, he has shitty motivation behind wanting to solve it.
But let's think about all the people in this country that sat around and tried to solve the QAnon mysteries that were all bullshit and ignored their families and then got their families involved. Like, it's very easy, can happen. Whatever Ethan Hawke is doing, he's definitely more productive than that. There were a lot of people that, like, sat on their computers and started thinking that Chipotle was running a pedophile ring based on their logo. So.
And I oop.
Yep. Definitely less productive. That's what I'm saying. Okay. So that's what I liked. I think, like I said, editing, acting, story, there's some good scares, but it's not anything that stands out. You got to name the stuff that you didn't like. Is there anything else on top of that you disliked? Or that you think it did poorly?
I think I really struggle to talk about this one, honestly, because I do think it comes down to like not being fully engaged in the story. That's my issue, and I just don't feel like anything else about it is something I would write home about. Like, I don't think that the performances are above and beyond, but I think that's an issue with the script, not the actors.
Oh, I agree. I'm not saying they're above and beyond. They're fine. Ethan Hawke is, believable.
Yeah. And, like, no, he's definitely believable. And I think the scares could have been crafted better. Like, I'm just comparing it to a film around the same time of Insidious, and I think the scary parts of Insidious are much, much scarier than this, and I do think they're kind of in the same vein.
I think you're right that they're scarier. I find Insidious to drag more than this movie, although I do find them pretty similar.
I think this has better pacing, you're right. I think Insidious, the third act, just, like, brings it down so bad. Yeah. And this has good pacing throughout.
This is that fun reveal, too, of them, like, moving. Is like, oh, yep, now. Like, they would have just stayed in the house. they weren't in any danger. It was once they leave is when the danger happens. But like he was fully believed that the danger was there. That's like a fun little twist and a good reveal to make that last act interesting because you don't really know where it's going. So you have to kind of assume a little bit, but
yeah, the pacing is definitely better. Yeah. I just think that like the highs aren't as high.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
I think in terms of scares, I agree. All right. What's our next thing that we got to talk about? Some themes?
Yeah, I think we can talk about some themes.
All right. I was thinking about this while commuting today. And I feel like the themes in this are there, but they're not like great or like driven home that well. Like they're there. They're just, I don't think they're fully fleshed out. But I do think a big part about it is the exploitation of true crime.
Yes.
Which we have chatted about. And actually, there's 3. Exploitation of true crime, delving into work and ignoring your family. What do we call that? Like, just like harming yourself through obsession? Is that kind of what we would call it? And lastly, and this is the one that I don't think it does the greatest job of, there's something to be said about like the nature of film and how film like can capture things and can capture tragedy.
So, I don't think I understand fully what you're trying to say with that one. Are you, like, referring... I feel like it ties in how I'm interpreting what you're saying with engaging with true crime. Like, I'm thinking about how, like, we have these terrible events from history on footage. Like, for example, 9/11. And I'm... Like, are you talking about how, like, if people watched footage of 9/11 or, like, 9/11 documentaries? Like, engaging with that negative things?
I think it can be anything. I think we have plenty of, like, war photography as well that, like, captures these horrific moments in time. And, like, Bagul, they say, can only come into the world via the image and when you engage with the image. So it's, like, you're kind of letting in this, like, tragedy or this negativity through engaging with it. I'm not saying you shouldn't. That's why I don't think this one is like super strong, and I'm not exactly sure what they're trying to say. Or maybe it's about the power of film and the power of photography to capture this type of stuff.
Yeah, I can buy into they're just trying to show like the power that this footage and like living in a high-tech society has on us, that we have all of these like we have good and bad at our fingertips, but, like, the consequences of having the bad at our fingertips, I guess. And, like, engaging with that. And because we don't see him engage with any good media at any point.
You're right. Maybe it's about power of image. Not exactly that it's negative or not, but that it just has the ability to. And that's impressive, right? I mean...
Yeah. Because then I'm, like, thinking, like, if that's what they're trying to say with, like, negative specifically, then it's like... Well, we learn from history, so we don't repeat it. Well, we should learn from history, so we don't repeat it.
When he destroys it, it's never really, like, gone, especially now.
No.
Like, everything's on the internet.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know. I might be overthinking this one. It was just... when they talk about Bagul, basically, the film and art and images are his, like, power to get in and out of this world. That made me go in that direction. Yeah. So I thought that one was interesting. But we can talk about the other ones.
And I do think that... Because... They literally sit us down and explain that's, like, what's been going on. So it's obviously very important, both for the plot, but then also I do think it's important thematically, but beyond what you're saying, I don't know what they actually mean.
Oh, you know what? It could be a theme I totally disagree with, which is the idea of, like, seeing violence leads to more violence. Like, violent video games leads to school shooters, which we know is not true and has, like, been proven multiple times to not be true.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering, or, I mean, I guess we do say that, people that do violence or, like, shooters do get inspired, I guess, by news coverage of it, right? Mm-hmm. That is true. So maybe I do agree with that one. I don't know. I'm conflicted.
I guess my other thing would be, like, what is the actual history of Bagul? Because if that is an actual thing from mythology...
Oh, then it changes,
Then that would obviously change things, but if you Google it, it only comes up with Sinister as, like, the first many things that come up, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I think maybe it's, like, a low-key thing from, like, paganism, but I don't know, so it's, like, hard for me to actually interpret that as anything, depending on, like, what the actual entity, if it's a thing. And
I mean, I doubt a Babylonian god has anything to do with images, considering there was no photography or video, you know?
yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
In
Use that noodle.
Well.
Yeah. Got you there.
Yeah, I guess so. But I do think that the true crime stuff's pretty evident. Like, obviously,
for sure.
He's moving into a house where a tragedy took place. He's, like, using that for himself. His wife says, "Is there anything you wouldn't do for a goddamn book?" He, like, makes it very clear that it's, like, about his, like, what he wants to achieve, and that he could do something else to make a paycheck, but he doesn't give a fuck about that. Which I guess in that regard, that's more of, like, a personal thing, but it's also, like, he's willing to exploit these strategies just for himself. And that's kind of, like, what we do by listening to true crime just for entertainment purposes. So,
yeah, I think that's true.
Yeah, so I think that theme is pretty on the nose.
Yes, I agree.
And I think it's interesting that this came out in 2012, because I feel like the rise in true crime media happened a little after that.
When was Serial? That was like the big first one. So I think that was around that time.
Yeah, I guess let's look.
That was like the first big one that I remember.
Podcast. That was the first like real big one.
2014. Yeah, so no, it was a little later.
Yeah. And I know the ones I primarily listened to were after that too, so do you think it's interesting? True crime documentaries have always existed. 60 Minutes, like, people obsessing over that shit has always existed, I think it's different for, like, our generation. Like, I doubt people from our parents' generation were sitting down and watching murder documentaries for fun.
No. Like, yeah, maybe this predicted it then.
Maybe.
Now the question is, if we're going with my other theme, does listening to true crime make people do crime? I don't think so.
No. No, it does not.
I'm sure that there are people that listen to true crime.
I've never committed a single crime.
Think about. I'm not saying this. We need to worry about it. I'm certain that there are killers out there that have listened to true crime to try to figure out how to get away with murders.
100%.
But like that doesn't mean that.
I mean, like, use your noggin.
Yes, that'd be the smart thing to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Learn from past people's mistakes. You know, don't do that, please. I'm not telling anybody to do that. My FBI agent is listening.
Yeah.
Okay, and then I think you kind of touched on this, but it's again, I don't think these are like super deep in here, but the destruction of self with obsession, right? Mm-hmm. Like that's something that's big. Is he's like obsessed, or he's obsessed with fame and trying to regain who he believes is his real self, and really is destroying his family and his sanity by doing so.
Well, I don't even see it as him trying to regain, like, his true self. He just, like, only gives a fuck about himself. And, like, when you live your life only to, like, benefit yourself or your own aspirations, you're not gonna have the best life if you're, like, a married man with kids. Yeah. Like, when you choose to marry someone, you are choosing to be less selfish. When you choose to, like, commit to someone, mm-hmm. especially if you choose to have kids, like, you're choosing to do things for the betterment of your partner and your children. So, like, absolutely fuck this man.
Yeah. And I do wonder, earlier in the movie, he talks about how he's like, I want to do it to solve the crime. Like, I want to bring justice. It's very hard to tell if he actually felt that way or he was just saying that. You know? Well,
yeah, maybe he felt that way with his first book, but he certainly doesn't feel that way anymore, and that's the point.
Yes.
Yeah, and I guess that also leads me to, like, think about with, like, other people who have a true crime podcast, was that ever, like, your ambition? Like, to put the word out there?
I doubt
or do you just think it was interesting?
Well, there was the Golden State Killer. She definitely did. Because she solved that, or, like, helped solve it.
And there are, like,
I can't think of her name, and I feel bad. Patton Oswalt's wife.
There are podcasts that I listen to where they've brought on, like, family members of victims.
Ew, that feels gross.
Who've, like, requested to come on to talk about, like, the case or, like, get the word out. And, like, there are true crime podcasts that have helped solve crimes because they put the word out there, and then people, like, it re-gets the energy going. So, yeah, it is interesting.
Yeah, I wonder if the saturation of that is just going to ruin that now, though. The saturation of true crime.
Well, but then you can also think about, like, the Gabby Petito case. They got tons of information and hits because everyone talked about it. Mm-hmm. Like, every podcaster with a true crime podcast, you had the intro of their podcast that couple of weeks talking about the case. And it was all over Twitter. And so, like, things like that have helped get footage or photos that have helped solve crimes. And I know that was like I do think that like word of mouth and stuff for that case helped.
I mean, they ended up just finding his body in a swamp.
But yeah, well, that's a whole.
So yeah, no, that's interesting. Okay, well, that's all I got on themes on this one. Nothing too crazy. I don't think it really swings for the fences, nor does it really make great contact. But there's some stuff there.
When we think about the deaths in this film, was there like a... Because we know that's going to be the best... What we're going to think of as the scariest scenes is one of the Super 8s. Did any one of them stick out to you and disturb you or scare you more than another?
Probably the first one. And... yeah, definitely the first one. The family being hung from the tree. That's really scary. That's like a very big fear of mine for some reason.
Yes. I agree with that one. I thought that was, like, the most disturbing, but I think it's also because I associate that with, like, being the most realistic of them.
Just the way it happens, too, is bad. They didn't break their necks. They're going to be up there for a while.
I also think the one with the kid, like, slitting his family's throats really bugged me because, again, that's also,
that was crazy.
People die like that, so...
That one is, yeah.
Not necessarily.
They don't really show much of that one for a reason.
Yeah, that one's too real.
Yeah.
Because people die by stabbings and stuff like all the time. So, yeah, that one's fucked up.
Oh, you know what? I would also say the pool one freaks me out because I'm very scared of drowning as well. So, like, tying cinder blocks to people and... That one felt like more really
out there.
Messes me up.
I've never listened to a podcast episode where they killed their... like, very few people kill their victims via drowning.
You haven't, read much about the mob then, I guess, and the cinder blocks on people's feet.
Okay, but they don't do it in, their fucking pool. They
they do it in the Hudson River. You're right.
I don't know. That one just felt, less grounded in reality than some of the other ones. Okay. So it didn't
Maybe that's why it
freaks
me out.
Much.
Tying him to a chair and then cinder blocking the chair. Ugh, I don't like that. Well, they're all pretty freaky.
Yeah. It's still freaky. It just doesn't feel as grounded in reality to me, so it doesn't bother me as much.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to say. I kind of like it when they're not grounded in reality. That's the one that gets me thinking more about, weird things. Also, they were all set up in a way that a child could do them.
See, I don't agree with that either. I don't think any of them are realistic for a child to do them.
I'm talking about in terms of strength.
Yeah, a child tied them to a fucking tree branch.
Yeah, that would make more sense. The branch did the lifting. That's the point. Like, if you could drug them, you could do that.
I don't buy that a child could do almost any of these.
All right, fine.
The only ones that a child could do were Ellison's, their family.
Cutting someone up with an axe? That'd be pretty hard.
I mean, she already managed the drugging, so I'm sure you could axe or throat cut.
All right, we don't need to debate the logistics.
I know. I feel like a dork for doing that, but it just bugged me so much for some fucking reason. I don't know why.
You're the people I get mad at.
Yeah.
All right, what's next? I'm ready. I'm done with themes. Hot takes. Oh, I don't have a hot take for this one. It's fine. It's not that scary. Is that the hot take?
Yeah, I think that is
it has
the hot take.
It has a couple good scenes.
Do you have any terrible Twitter takes that you would like to bring to the table?
I have one. And I haven't decided if it's terrible or not. I think it's interesting. They said, Sinister would have been much more fabulous without Bagul being there. The first half was extremely solid. And
fabulous.
I wanted to think that was terrible because I think Bagul is really well designed. But I feel like all the issues with this movie come down to Bagul. And the lore of that character and trying to understand that and then being explained and then being kind of confused and being like, oh, what the fuck? What does any of this mean? And so I do wonder if there's a world where there is no Bagul and there's no, element to this that's paranormal. I don't know. Just interesting.
Well, I think that goes to what we were saying in the beginning, that this would be more interesting if it was just a collection of the Super 8s. somehow.
Yeah.
But I also don't know how you would connect those.
Do this do this like Zodiac, where it's like some dude that's actually just doing all these killings and kidnapping children, and he's real. That'd be way scarier.
Ooh.
He's 70 and he's still doing it.
Ooh.
And then Ellison solves it, and
I've read books
and
like
then
that.
Ellison solves it and writes the book, but he gets divorced and loses his family in the process because he's too obsessed with his craft. There you go. That's just Zodiac. But
I've definitely read books that are very similar to that as well. With
I like it.
Long term.
Well, that might have worked better.
Killer.
But what if they can just wear Bagul's mask, and that's why it's really scary? And so it's just some old dude standing around.
That's just the black phone.
Hey, no. This is different. This is a different Ethan Hawke movie. I'm not rewriting this. It was just an idea. I don't think that's a terrible take. I thought it was at first, and I was like, you know what? I kind of get it.
I do think Bagul is pretty scary looking, and some of the scares that scared me the most were related to him. But I do think there's a reality in which this film doesn't have that, and is still a good film. So I don't hate it. This terrible take of mine that I found is kind of silly. Someone tweeted, Sinister appreciation post. Share your thoughts on what you love about this movie. And someone responded and said, underrated.
No.
And
I saw somebody else say it was underrated, and I was about to say, I think it's rated exactly where it's supposed to be.
yeah, I find it very confusing. Someone could call this underrated. What do you mean underrated? Everyone knows this fucking movie. That's why us covering it is almost stupid, but I just kind of needed to rewatch it as an adult who watches movies. I just... literally, in what world is this?
It's extremely well known. It's a big normie movie. Sorry, it sounds so lame. It's a big normie.
Yeah.
A horror movie. But it's fine. I think it's a lot of people our age watched it in high school.
Yeah.
So...
Underrated.
I think it's rated right where it's supposed to be.
I think it's overrated.
It might be, but that kind of puts it right where it needs to be. That's all I got, though. It's definitely an interesting movie. I like that. Let's do a little exercise of rewriting it someday. That should be our new podcast, rewriting horror movies, even though we have no credentials. I'm sure everyone would love that. If we just took movies we didn't like and rewrote them. I
don't think it would work. I'm too dumb.
Nope,
I'm not creative.
I'm ready. I can do it. All right, we'll kick you out. Matt and I can do it.
Yeah, that's fine. You guys can. Since I was just talking about how I think it's overrated, I think it's time to rate it.
Okay. Oh, I don't know. I think I got my number.
I have mine too.
Okay, you go, because yours is going to be lower than mine.
5 out of 10.
5?
Maybe 5.5.
Okay.
Before we started talking, I was going to give it a 5.5 or a 6, and then talking about it made my blood boil for no discernible
I was going to rate
reason.
it very similar to Insidious, so I was going to give it a 6.5 out of 10.
I like Insidious so much more.
What'd you give Insidious?
This.
I gave Insidious like a 6.
I gave Insidious a 6.9, but then I retroactively said a 7.2.
Okay.
Or something stupid.
There you go. 5's fine. We don't have a lot. That might be one of our first 5s.
Yeah, it just didn't do it for me.
You know me. I'm either a 2 guy or an 8 guy.
I
8 or higher.
Like I said, I just don't find it over. It's more unique than a haunted house.
I forgot to put it on my Letterboxd. Everyone should follow me on Letterboxd.
It's your Letterboxd.
I don't know. I gotta pull it up. Stall for me, Hannah. Quick.
Stalling.
I don't even know. Oh, Matt Hanna 17. Just my name. No spaces.
So follow him on
Matt
Letterboxd.
Hanna 17.
It's a lot of horror movies and then obviously there's other things, but your last probably 10 or horror movies?
Well, we just watched, I think my last was Lamb. Did I watch anything after Lamb?
No, you definitely didn't.
I have not watched any movies for pleasure. All right, 3 out of 5. Oh, Jesus, that even seems high. Maybe you're right. 5 out of 10 makes more sense when rating it on Letterboxd. Actually, nope. I'm giving it 3 out of 5, 6 out of 10. You know how it be.
How it be.
That's what the movie is. So, that's all I got. You got anything else?
No.
Well, please follow. We're going to solve the mystery of what happened to Stephanie Stevenson. So please, give a follow. I think it'll help us figure out, what happened
I
in
literally
this case.
didn't even, when you said that, I was like, who the fuck is Stephanie Stevenson?
Hannah, we've done a lot of research on this real-life story, okay? Can't have you forgetting those things.
I'm worried that on some level this is inspired by a real case and that we're just, fucking around.
Well, if it is, then cancel us.
Yeah, that's
Do
fine.
it.
Go ahead.
Don't listen.
Yeah,
idiots.
it's cool.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Horror Hour with the Hannas. Make sure to listen to future episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, or wherever you can find podcasts. You can follow us at Horror Hour with the Hannas on TikTok and Instagram for more content. If you like the podcast, please follow and leave a review on your favorite podcasting app. Happy hauntings!